Testing. Can you hear me? Testing. Can you hear me? Oh, I hear my echo. Testing. I hear my echo. Yeah, my bad. I can fix that. Duh. There we go. And not only did they miss your first joke, which I found rather amusing, but now they don't. Now they still don't hear you. Cool, Bruck Commander. And I don't really have headphones. Yeah. Anyone hear me? Okay, you can say it again.
What about me? Can everybody hear me?
Major echo. All right, let me grab a headset. Give me 1 second.
So the echo was my fault. You shouldn't hear that now.
Okay, do you guys still hear an echo when I talk?
Oh, wow.
All right, hold up.
You can tell we're not AV geeks.
It's gone. Okay.
Make sure.
I can hear Leo now. Tyler echo's gone. Hey, Tyler, can you say something real quick?
Yeah. Hey, everyone. No echoes.
Can you guys hear? All right. So you can hear Tyler, myself, Nick. Say something, Nick.
How about me? Any echo with me?
All right. There we go.
I think we're good.
All
Sweet.
Right. Third time's the charm, right?
Did not want to have to bust out the Turtle Beach. You know I don't want to do that.
So I gave some 2 outstanding jokes earlier. You guys missed it. So I don't have a third joke. So I'm just gonna go right into the intro. This is Leo Bastidis from TrustedSec, joined by Nick and Tyler, also from TrustedSec Defer team. Um, Nick, say hello to Twitterland or to Twitchland.
Hello, Twitchers.
And then Tyler, say hello to everybody, sir.
Hey, everyone.
Cool. So today we're joining for the Ghost Come Out at Night. We're going to be talking about Solarwinds. We're going to be talking about a little bit about Sunburst and it, kind of from an IR incident response perspective. But before we get into the good stuff, let's go. Let me introduce you to Tyler Hudak. You guys met Nick before, so Tyler, go ahead and give us a little bit of background about yourself and what you're currently doing.
Sure. Right now, I'm the incident response lead at TrustedSec. I get to kind of run these guys, give them all the hard work. Before that, I've been in security for about 20 years, so actually over 20 years now. Started off my career doing like IT systems administration, Unix administration, Windows administration back in the like Windows NT days, to kind of date myself. To kind of date myself further, my first major incident was the I love you virus. Remember when that got hit? But since then, my career kind of progressed from starting to being basically an analyst for a company back in the early 2000s when nobody really had security jobs. Then I went to I did pen testing for a while for a company called CoreLogic, who's still around. And then inevitably, I just started to fall in love with malware analysis. Really dove into that, kind of taught myself that, and then that just inevitably led to forensics and incident response. And then I just honestly I got lucky. I got lucky with some of my jobs, and ended up, getting a lot of experience and, kind of falling to where I am now by luck.
So, Tyler, so I've been working on you for a year, but one of the coolest, interesting facts that, well, there's a few things that I find very interesting. Uh, we both are big fans of Star. Actually, I think all three of us are fans of Star Wars, right? Nick, you're like a newer generation Star Wars fan. Is that correct?
Newer generation. All right. So before we go down this rabbit hole, there's a couple of things that need to be addressed. First of all, Tyler, someone in the chat said they went through your Pluralsight malware analysis course and really liked it.
Cool. Thank you.
TrustedSec said I wasn't born yet when the I Love You virus came out. I tried to make a response, but I don't have an account. I think I need to make a Twitch account. I said I have no problem. I said I have no problems with jokes about young age. They only make me more powerful. So, Star Wars, right? So I like the prequels, episodes 1, 2, 3. I don't have a problem with the original trilogy. I like the sequel trilogy the least.
Somebody said you look 17.
That's fine with me.
Hey, take advantage of it, man.
That's what I'm saying.
That baby face. But go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, so you said that the prequels are your favorites. Let me ask, and this is not a young joke or anything like that. How old were you when you saw the prequels? Around, you don't have to give exact.
Okay, so I think episode 3 came out in 07. If I'm not
Sounds all right.
So I was a young lad, we'll say that.
Okay. So I have a theory. So when I was born in 76. Star Wars came out in 77. So I was like really young when the original trilogy came out. I remember going to the theater when I was like, I must have been like 5 to see Empire. I was in first grade when Return of the Jedi came out. So that was, that's been my favorite trilogy. I have a theory that the trilogy you saw when you were young is going to be your favorite, because I remember when the prequels came out, everybody who had seen the original trilogy as kids hated it, absolutely hated it. But now with the I don't know, the third set of movies, whatever you want to call them, in the series, everybody who were kids during the prequels love the prequels and hate the new movies. So my theory is about 20 years from now, everybody who saw the new movies as kids are going to just absolutely love it.
Yeah, and I'll also say that when I was a kid, what really got me into Star Wars was, first of all, I loved Legos, still do. If I didn't have my background up, you could see my Lego Star Wars builds behind me. But Lego Star Wars, I think I got into those games before I even watched all the prequels. So my whole world was the Star Wars prequels, and I really wasn't connected with the original trilogy at all. But even besides that, I think the story, the whole Anakin Skywalker story is really, to me, it's always going to be the center of Star Wars, is the story of Anakin Skywalker. All that other stuff is, to me, secondary. But that's just how I see it.
So I feel like there's like 3 generations here. Like the original trilogy generation, then there's like the prequel generation, which is you, and I'm like right in the middle between those 2 generations, where my foray into the Star Wars universe was actual the Thrawn books, Admiral Thrawn. That was my first. I think I told the story a few times. That was the first book I ever read in my life, like that wasn't school assigned. It was those books, and I think that's what got me into it. And then I got into the movies afterwards, and after that. But I feel like I'm in limbo because there's no movies that I kind of relate to, besides maybe The Mandalorian. That's probably like my favorite now. But
yeah, I like that show.
Yeah, I think everybody does. But yeah, so cool. And look, I have to wear the shirt, so or the sweater. So just for
I used to play Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2 on PlayStation. Also, that was around. It had to have been around the same time as when I was into the other games too. Yep. So I was really hyped when the new ones came out.
Actually, isn't that still kind of big? Battlefront 2?
Well, yeah, but they had the originals. So the ones that come out now are not the originals. There were originals like back in 2000, I don't know, 2004, I think the first one came out for PlayStation 2. Well, for whatever consoles were out.
Yeah.
That's where I kind of got started. That was a lot of fun.
Okay. So that's pretty cool. So I think that kind of links us, all three of us. All three of us are big Star Wars nerds in our own right, in our own, I guess, not genre, but our own segment in the Star Wars universe. But one thing I do find else is interesting about Tyler is you worked on the original GE CERT team,
Mhm.
and I always look back
Oh,
to that era when it comes to where we come from as far as defenders, instant responders, SOC analysts, and I always look towards that and towards the stories and the books that reference it, and everybody that came from the military right into the G CERT team and
Mhm.
incorporated what they learned. So it's like the grandfather's tip of the spear. Can you tell us a little bit of experience about the original SOC at the G CERT team?
It, I'm not gonna lie, it was pretty cool. So for those who don't know, Richard Baitlick, he's Dow Security, TAO Security on Twitter. He was hired as the director of incident response for GE back. Oh man, I can't even remember when we started. I would have to go back and look at my LinkedIn profile, honestly. Um, but
Must have been
what
early
what
2000s. Must have been
yeah,
cool late 90s,
it
early 2000s.
was about 2010, I think. I would have to look. But he had gotten hired, and he was really the only person on the GE incident response team. And when I say GE, I mean like the overarching holding company, General Electric. You know, GE at that point in time had a bunch of like subsidiary companies like GE Capital. NBC was part of GE back then. GE Healthcare, GE Aviation, and so on. And so at one point, he got a call from NCIS saying, "Hey, we just saw a lot of information from GE being sent over to China." And at that point, that's when his boss said, "All right, you need to go hire a bunch of people." And so he hired a bunch of people. This was, APT had done this before APT was a common term. I'm not going to say we were one of the first teams that were going up against APT, because there were other teams that we would collaborate with. But we were definitely seeing some of the first activity, I think. But so he hired on. So the first couple of people he hired on were Bam Vischer, who writes the Squeal project. Or is it Squeal? Yeah, Squeal. He still maintains that. Then he hired Ken Bradley, who was a FireEye consultant who had worked with them and then came over to GE. He hired David Bianco, who has done just a ton of stuff. I think a lot of people know him now for the Pyramid of Pain. He created that. He's over at Target right now. And then that's where they were at. And then on Richard's blog, which I followed all the time back then, I still do. I mean, but he
Yeah,
had
me too.
posted something saying, "Hey, he explained, we're looking for, I'm running the GE CERT. We're putting the team together. We're looking for somebody who can do malware analysis and reverse engineering." And at that point in time, I had done malware analysis and reverse engineering, but I I hadn't, done it like quote unquote professionally. I was a consultant back then still, but mostly doing pen testing. We had done a couple IR jobs at the company I was working with. But I was constantly doing reverse engineering and malware analysis. At that point in time, SANS and the HoneyNet project were putting out like challenges like every week that I was doing. I actually won a couple, and so I had this experience, and I was like, there's no way that I'm going to get this job. But I sent in my resume, and it just led to me being one of the first couple people on the team, and I just got really lucky.
Yeah.
Um, it was a pretty amazing experience. It was also eye opening because that was my first true incident response position, and I remember. So I will always remember this. It was like 2 or 3. So have you guys seen Charlie the Unicorn, the Charlie the Unicorn videos on YouTube?
I have.
No, I have
Okay.
not.
All right. So you have, after this is done, go watch Charlie the Unicorn. It's this stupid like Flash cartoon that was out back then. But we it, I don't know why, but the whole team was just like, constantly watching this thing. It was just one of those stupid things that we were constantly watching. So we had a bunch of IDS alerts because we had instrumented the entire GE network for network stuff. And Bam was my team lead at that point. And so, we had specific alerts from these APT groups that if they went off, they were in our network. It didn't matter what time it was. We were getting up and we were working it. So like 3 a.m., I get this phone call and I like half pick up my phone. I'm like, hello? And the band's on the other side going, Tyler, it's time to go to Candy Mountain, which is from the video. And I was like, what? that was my first foray into that. But yeah, it was. We did a lot of really cool things. We got to work a lot of cool stuff. It was very cool with the fact that NBC was part of GE at that time because the Olympics happened our first year there, and so we got to kind of help out with some of that stuff. And we did a lot of really cool stuff. And it's been great to see how the GE cert has grown since I've left. It was when I left, it was time to leave, but it's continued on. The people who are there are just still just amazing. So
I love hearing
That's
stories
awesome.
about that. Yeah, I can never get enough, and I'm actually I already googled trying to unicorn, so that's my homework for tonight. So there's a 4-part series, 20 minutes each. So these are full blown episodes.
Yeah, the fourth one came out like a couple years ago.
Okay.
The first three are just weird and hilarious.
I need you guys to become famous so that I can tell a story like that.
It's like our movie of choice when I was at the SOC, like in Baghdad or whatever. Our movie of choice was Friday. That's like it came out around that time,
Okay.
and it must have been we must have seen that movie like 300 times. Towards the end, everybody in the SOC can recite the words without just by hearing the music, and it was like every day was on. It was like the only movie DVD that everybody could agree on. Back then, yeah, we had DVD players back then, with early 2000s or whatever. But yeah, that's crazy. I love hearing stories like that, and I'm still a big fan of Richard Baitlick and Van Fisher and all of them. We still everybody follows them now, right? So cool. Thank you, Tyler, for that. So there's a couple more questions before we pivot into Solar Winds, but there's a couple of Star Wars questions, so that's always
Oh, all
good.
right.
I lost the chat, unfortunately. By the way, I got an account running so I can interact in the chat.
Nice. So Baby Yoda was a beer. Yeah. So my sweater is Baby Yoda holding a beer, which is Goruk. How you say his name? Goruk or Grook? I can't say his name, his actual name. Uh, let's see here. What that's borderline slanderous. And I saw one question in here. Oh, somebody said Sith is greater than Jedi. So I'm not sure about that. I'm more of I'm a gray neutral evil type of person. So I'm a big like Boba Fett, Animal Thrawn, and since I read his books, Animal Thrawn's not a bad guy. He's trying to make his species survive, and so he just got incorporated into the Empire. That's his best chance for his species to survive and his planet, and that's what he does. But he's not malicious at all. He takes care of his peoples. He's a great leader. All right, so enough about Animal Thrawn and my man crush on him. What's the best movie from the original trilogy to Tyler?
The original trilogy, I think it's Star Wars, the original,
The
the
original
first
one,
one.
the
Then I
first
would
one,
go to Empire.
number 4. I see OG Baby G.
You gotta
I
watch. You
think
gotta watch Rogue One, then you can watch Episode 4.
Yeah,
so.
I love Rogue One too.
I think
I love
they're
that
doing
shit.
a spin-off or something like that. They're
Yeah,
doing something.
the spy. I can't remember his name. He's getting his own
Oh,
series.
okay, perfect.
Oh yeah.
Obviously,
Yep.
spoiler alert, but obviously it takes place before the movie. But
Somebody said my man knows his Thrawn. Respect. Yes. So I can't wait till he comes out in the new series, and hopefully they do him justice. Like hopefully he's not super evil or anything like that. Hopefully they do him justice. All right. So let's pivot into the hot topic of the week and of the month and of the year probably. Solar Wind. So there's two recent blog posts that was put out. One by Nick and one by Tyler. So Nick, I'm going to hand it over to you if you want to speak a little bit about your blog post that was just recently put out, and I'll put it on the chat here for your blog post. But
Yeah.
so for people that don't know, Nick recently published a blog post with like high level analysis of the SolarWinds breach, and also he correlated a bunch of information, the best information he can gather at the time, and he put it all in one post. So I'm gonna bring that up here, and
It's like somebody did.
oh, somebody posted it. Perfect. Thank you, sir, or ma'am.
By the way, I like how as soon as SolarWinds is mentioned, like all the faces in the stream just get sad and like the eyebrows come back down. All the happy
Oh,
times are gone.
oh, okay. I can't do a
Well,
full
so
picture.
so yeah, I mean, there's not much to say about about mine, to be honest with you, but really the intent of my blog post, which is pretty short, um, was really to just kind of bring all of the information together in one place, because there were when we were looking through this, and obviously new stuff is coming out every day, but I mean, there were recommendations from anybody who wrote about it had recommendations, assuming they were a vendor. But like Microsoft had recommendations relevant to Azure Active Directory, um, and then there were recommendations for network hunting from different sources, and then SolarWinds had the recommendations for updating. So, kind of my goal was to just put out something short and sweet that sort of synthesized all that together. So in my blog post, it's broken up into, I think, 3 categories. So you have like recommendations for hardening Active Directory. Most of those were taken from the Microsoft post. Those are pretty detailed. A lot of that stuff I've never even interacted with in like Azure AD. So it's a good resource for sure. And they came out with a subsequent post as well that actually clarifies it even further, which I really appreciated. I'll see if I can find it. But then I have recommendations for general threat hunting, and I don't know, Leo, is there another section in there? I
Yeah,
thought there
so there's
was.
recommendations for general investigation and hunting. There's hardening Active Directory. There's the indicator of compromise section, but there's also recommendations related to SolarWinds Orin product, to the actual product.
So I'm gonna paste the new Microsoft one in there in the chat because I think it's pretty good.
So let's back up a little bit.
Yeah.
Let's talk for the folks that don't haven't been keeping up with the news for the last week. Can you speak a little bit about the Solar Winds, like in context of what happened and how is UNC 2452 related to Solar Winds Orion, a product,
Yeah.
and just the general gist of what happened, just for the people that aren't following as closely as we are.
Yep. So, it looks like we went from like 60 to 50 as soon as we started talking about SolarWinds. I thought that was going to happen when we started talking about Star Wars, but I guess people just want to talk about like the fun
Star
stuff.
Wars podcast is gonna be next. Just us playing
So,
Battlefront.
so malware already pieced said, is it pronounced Orion or Orion? We were just talking about that before we got on. I think we've all agreed it's Orion. At least that's how I say it. But first of all, I want to say that when I was getting started, and like I mentioned on the last stream, I kind of took the fast track through school into industry rather than having a large, comprehensive background in like IT, network administration, or system administration, stuff like that. So when I was really learning about attackers, attack techniques, etc., this was how I envisioned all attackers were before I had any real IR in the trench experience. And I was like, man, I have so much to learn. Like, attackers are so far ahead, and they, how am I, like, you're never going to detect them. And then I was like, I realized what really happened. And it's like, oh, you gain access to a domain controller on a really important network, and you decide to run a crypto miner on it. Okay. So, but anyway, the level of, well, yeah, I'll give you the background here, and then you guys can jump in as well. So SolarWinds obviously is the company that has the Orion product. And it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's an IT management software. And I preface that because, like I said, I don't come from a sysadmin background, but it's a IT management software. And long story short, this particular incident is categorized as a supply chain compromise. And what makes it a supply chain compromise is that an adversary compromised Solarwinds in a way that they compromised the software, like the integrity of the product that's being pushed out. So now all the customers downstream from that who are using Orion are downloading a compromised product that they think is from a trusted source. So if you think about supply chain compromise, the same thing can happen on the hardware side, where something gets built with a part that's from a manufacturer that they think is trusted, but somehow that part is compromised, whether security wise or quality wise or whatever. That part gets integrated into the product, and now you have a product from a trusted source, except there's a component of that that has been compromised. So that's the idea behind the supply chain attack. And a nation state actor managed to compromise SolarWinds, gain access to their build process, and actually manipulate the source code of the Orion software. I'd say that's pretty much a general overview.
And how is the 24? What is it? 2452?
Right.
How are they really?
Yeah. Yep. So UNC 2452. If you don't like buzzwords and weird names, then this is not the industry to get into, that's for sure. So UNC 2452, if you're familiar with like the way that FireEye and other companies categorize attackers, sometimes they're called APT, APT1, APT, whatever number. But before they get categorized as an APT, meaning before there's enough intelligence to really identify who they are and build a profile, a comprehensive profile, they're called UNCs, basically. But I don't remember what that stands for. Somebody who knows can drop that. Yeah, probably.
Uncategorized. Yeah, that sounds right.
So this actor is UNC 2452. That's how they've been labeled. And so yeah, they're the adversary, as far as we know, that has carried out the attack from start to finish.
Yeah, just to kind of interject there with what you're saying too, the one thing to note is a lot of people are saying that this is Cozy Bear, which is another one of the APG groups, but nobody has actually, if you look, nobody has actually, as far as I know, has actually stated, yes, in fact, this is, which is why I think they're giving it the UNC designation. They're not saying that it's a specific threat actor or known APT group. It might be, I'm not saying it's not, but I haven't seen any confirmation. And in fact, I've been on a couple client calls where they are assuming that it's them and are going based off of that. And I was like, look, you can't be doing that, until it's confirmed. You can't do that. And I heard something the other day that so Jake Williams did the SANS podcast, or not webcast on this. I think it was Monday or Tuesday. And he said, I can't remember the gentleman's name, but the guy who does, or who built the threat intelligence SANS course said he has what?
Yeah, Rob Lee.
No, I don't think it's Rob Lee. It's somebody else. But he said he's got the Simpsons test, and basically what that means is, if somebody told you that instead of Cozy Bear it was the Simpsons who compromised everything, would that really matter? Does attribution actually affect how you're going to respond to it? And the answer is no in this case. So it helps a little bit to kind of determine post exploitation tools, tactics, and procedures, but in the end, it doesn't matter.
So
that's an interesting point.
I need to interrupt here because that was a game changer. You heard it here first. Attribution does not matter. No matter what Twitter says, attribution does not matter. I'm just kidding. That's always that.
Not exactly what I meant, but
yeah, I'm putting words in his mouth. But that's a highly debated subject on Twitter.
Well, you're right, because if you think about it, look, I don't mean to offend anybody, depending on what role you play in InfoSec, but
it's a safe space here.
Twitter is dominated in some ways by threat intel. Threat intel analysts, practitioners, whatever. And at the end of the day, the people that we get on calls with as IR consultants, it's not going to impact them, the name we throw around. Some of them will. If you have a very mature security program and you're a mature organization, you can gain value from that. But in my experience, and Tyler and Leo, you can also chime in, the vast majority of organizations that I've worked with, that has no bearing. They want to have actionable details about what is happening on their network, how to identify it and how to stop it. And then they want to clean up and move on and prevent it in the future. Would you
So
agree
Yeah.
with that?
yeah, I would like to bring up tying this back to the original CE CERT team and GE CERT team, and then Richard Baitlick. He likes to say the security 1%. The security 1% is the people on Twitter, the people that have all these awesome teams doing this awesome work, but they're 1% of the security of the industry. So he likes to say the security 1%. Are you the security 1%? If you follow Richard Baitlick, you're the security 1%. That's what he likes to say. And there's some other ways to quantify it if you're in the security 1%. But pretty much, if you're on Twitter and you're following threat intel analysts on Twitter, you're probably like security 1%.
Yeah,
Most
and
likely.
yet we have this impression that like that's the whole infosec community. It's like you talk to somebody from at a conference. Well, conference is a bad example, but you talk to somebody else like, oh, do you know so and so on Twitter? They're like, no, never heard of them. It's like your mind is blown. It's like, but they have 100,000 followers. How can you not know who that is? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not the whole world. But I'd actually like to hear everyone else's opinions in the chat on that topic as well. I mean, I don't want to bash threat intel by any means because it is valuable and it can help point to things like motive, like what's the attacker's motive. But even then, sometimes it's like, what's their motive? And you ask the question, what's this actor's motive? And you look at all the places that like a specific APT is targeting, and it's like, okay, maybe they're targeting, their motive is to steal something from a specific sector. It's like, oh, they're targeting, the energy sector, technology companies, governments. It's like such a wide group that they're targeting. Even then, it becomes more difficult, in my opinion. But anyway,
And Nick,
that,
there's a question for you. Let me read it out loud here.
yeah.
Luke Beck, would you suggest that a good immediate threat reduction process would be that if you don't deal in overseas countries, would blocking like a GeoIP block be a quick immediate response?
So I don't think I've ever not recommended GeoIP blocking. Now, the thing with that is the immediate argument to that is like, well, you could easily spoof an IP, or you not even spoof an IP, use a US based cloud provider. It's like, okay, fine. If it's going to take you 5 minutes to implement GeoIP blocking, but it disrupts an attacker's entire standard operating procedure, and now they have to switch to a US based provider, just do it. Plus, it's going to cut down on a lot of noise as well. A lot of scanning activity, like all the noise that you get from your firewall alerts. If half of that is from foreign IP addresses, wouldn't you like to reduce that noise down by 50%, maybe? That's just an arbitrary number, but
What
that's
what do
my
you
perspective on that.
what do you think, Tyler? I have my opinion. I'll save it for last.
So I guess it depends. Are we talking in general or specifically around the SolarWinds stuff? In general, I agree with what Nick's saying. GIP blocking makes sense. Every organization is different, so you have to weigh that. I've been in organizations where they can't GIP block China or Russia or something like that because they do business with those countries. For specific to SolarWinds, I would just honestly, I would block all internet traffic from SolarWinds. There's going to be it's the SolarWinds Orion servers. There's going to be very few domains or IP addresses that it needs to contact, and basically it's just for updates. If I'm understanding the way that it works correctly, outside of like any internet IP addresses, DMZs, AWS servers, things like that it might be legitimately monitoring, which you can whitelist. So in that type of case, I would say for the SolarWinds stuff, it doesn't need internet access at all. So I would just do a deny all and then whitelist very specific things that it was allowed that should be allowed out,
And
especially now.
there's an updated list of domains that are tied back to this breach, correct? I've seen a
Yeah, so
couple. Go ahead.
yeah, there's one main one. It's like AVMSR Cloud or something like that. there's the one main domain, and then there have been a couple others that have been found based off of passive DNS listening and things like that from various organizations. That I think the theory, and Nick, you may know more about this than me, but I think the theory is, what would happen is the backdoor would spin up after 12 to 14 days. It would sleep for that long after it was, first the update was, the SolarWinds update was downloaded. Then it would, reach out to this domain, and it would, if it receives commands back, then those commands would tell it to go to another domain. So it was really only going to this command and control domain very shortly, or for like beaconing.
Right.
Outside, after that, it would immediately go to whatever the attacker told it to go to, which was specific to the organization that was compromised.
Okay. Right. So every organization that has the backdoor, I should have had a beacon out to that known domain, which was AVM something cloud, something like that.
Yep.
And I don't know when the 12 to 14 days comes in, whether it's before that beacon. Well, it must be before that beacon, right?
Yeah. So now I haven't personally analyzed this yet. I haven't had a chance to, but it's .NET, so you can just reverse it to source code. But what it would do as an anti-forensics measure is it would once the update got on, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, because we kind of glanced over that a little bit really quickly. Once it would the malicious DLL would get loaded, it would see what the time date stamp of it was either its file or the main executable for the Orion server, and if the current date was not 12 to 14 days past that, then it would just immediately shut down, and then sleep for however long and then check again.
So that's where FireEye got their 2 weeks sleep cycle.
Yep.
Okay. That's awesome. And then
got a few questions in here.
A few questions. Okay, let me jump into those questions here.
Is it true that you're only at risk with SolarWinds if you had auto update on? So instead of answering the question in that way, I would say this. Well, there might be a reason you're asking it that way, but you can confirm your version of SolarWinds against the versions that had the backdoor. And the versions that had the backdoor dated back to March of 2020. And I think in my blog post, I'm pretty sure I have those versions listed. And so you could just compare that. We're jumping all over the place, but it's okay. So the actors actually had access to SolarWinds. I don't know how many people know this because I only saw it in one write-up, but there's evidence that they had access to SolarWinds all the way back at least October of 2019. Mm-hmm. And in October 2019, they were at the point of actually manipulating their code to test their ability to implement the backdoor. So that means they had access before that, because they need time to, reconnaissance and all that. Who knows how much lead up there was to that. So hopefully that answers your question, because to be honest with you, I'm not sure if auto update saves you, or
I mean, the situation that I could see where that would save you is if you installed it pre the known compromised time period. So technically pre-March 2020, you had the version before that, and then you never updated it. Then you would be okay. Let's caveat that by saying, though, if this adversary wanted to get into your network, that's not the only way that they're going to try. If Microsoft and I think FireEye have already come out and said, have stated that this threat actor doesn't just use SolarWinds, and you should never just assume that the attacker is just using one compromised vector. In this case, they were probably using phishing, they were using whatever they could. So just because your SolarWinds wasn't the vulnerable version doesn't mean you might not have been targeted. I mean, for the SolarWinds vulnerability, or not vulnerability, backdoor, then yeah, I would say that you were probably okay. But again, do you really want to take that chance? I would still do some investigation.
Yeah, I haven't dig deep into the SolarWinds breach just because I've been on a threat hunt engagement, but I have seen reports where they're hinting at that there possibly could have been other avenues of attack like to include Office 365, but they don't elaborate onto that into that vector so much. Like I read the 8K or that for the SEC
Mhm.
that SolarWinds did, and they indicate that there was like suspicious activity on Office 365 related to the attacker, but they don't know how they used it or didn't elaborate how Office 365 was used in the filing. I didn't do additional research, but have you seen that at all? Anything about Office 365 in the research you conducted, Nick or Tyler?
So the only mention to Office 365 that I saw, and I think Tyler, this is in your blog post as well, is that they will set up an OAuth application to be able to read mail.
Yeah.
Am I right about that?
Yeah, I think it was Microsoft. Yeah, it was Microsoft who said that and again, you remember a lot of this data or a lot of this information is just we're getting it secondhand from other companies, so we don't know the context around it. We don't know if it's correct, but Microsoft did say that they had seen that this in either post compromise or somehow related to this adversary that. They were installing malicious OAuth applications in order to gain access to email within Office 365. Whether or not that's related, I don't know. The SEC filing that you were mentioning, Leo, that whole thing with where it's really weird because if you read it, SolarWinds is talking about the compromise, how they're trying to deny it in some ways, and then all of a sudden they talk about, oh, and we had we were notified of this Office 365 compromise.
Yeah,
Like, is that
yeah,
related? What does that have to do with this? And
exactly.
it was just really out of the blue and weird.
Yeah, I didn't dig deeper just because I've been threading all week. Um, but yeah, I saw that. I was like, wait a minute, and I talk shit on Twitter, but I mean, I was like, oh, so somebody got fished. But honestly, I don't know what exactly happened because I didn't do additional research. I had to put a disclaimer on Twitter like, no, I don't know what's going on. But I did read that Office 365 and then on the SEC filing, and then they stopped talking about it. I was like, okay, that was weird. But yeah, just like you described, there's a lot of questions. So we
Yeah, it's
haven't
blowing
we
up.
we haven't even gone deep in yet. But
I know.
um,
Somebody said Reuters was reporting tonight. So there's some chat in here about the Microsoft being breached.
Yeah.
So I didn't read into that. I only saw some Twitter banter, as usual. That's how I derive most of my opinions. Um,
that's pretty new, right? That
that's
just
a
came
joke
out,
for the
right?
Yeah,
record.
and if you
Yeah.
read the Reuters article, there's like no details in it. Microsoft is denying it. I don't know where Reuters got their information from. They're not revealing sources or anything like that. And I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I'm a little hesitant to believe that, but who knows?
They could have misunderstood the situation, also because of the whole component of the Azure AD and all that. Who knows? Was the Microsoft stuff from decoding the DGAs? I would say no, right, Tyler?
Yeah, I don't remember seeing micro. So what they're talking about is when the backdoor is loaded into Orion or starts up in Orion, it reaches out to its command and control server, but it reaches out to a subdomain in that AVR whatever cloud dot whatever domain. That subdomain is an encoded version of the domain that the backdoor is on. So you can actually go through and reverse all those encodings and see all of these known places that had the backdoor running. It doesn't mean that they were compromised by the attacker. It just means that the backdoor was running. Well, I guess technically it does mean that, but it doesn't mean the adversary was active in their environment, I should say. And so people have already gone and decoded these lists, and you can go and you can see what domains have been found. There were about, I think, 4,000 of them that have been found, or at least 4,000 subdomains. I can't remember how many actually decode to something. And we've looked at that list. I've looked at that list. I don't know how many times this week. I don't remember seeing Microsoft, but that doesn't mean that they're not in there as some weird subdomain.
Right.
There's I think we answered this one, but there's another question called from Flatpack the Legend, like that name. I'd love to have an opinion of you guys as a means, method, and motive. I think we're kind of indirectly touching that. As far as attribution or means, method, and motive, it's hard to say. We're not in the front lines, and we're not intelligence gathering the attack. But just from my experience in the military, we will have to be in the front lines. But I mean, intelligence gathering. I mean, I would think that that's the primary objective is to gather intelligence. Why? For what reason? I have no idea because attribution is very difficult, and we're not in the front lines. We're not getting real time intelligence. We're not getting the whole picture. We're just getting everything second and third hand from like just like you guys and everybody else. Um, but means, method, and motive, I have no idea. Um, to me, it's intelligence gathering because knowledge is very valuable, and maybe they're saying I have no idea to be honest. You guys have opinion on that? Means, method, and motive.
To be honest
Uh,
with you, I'm not sure how to even approach
Yeah,
approach
yeah,
that question. You know.
yeah, method and motive. So I guess it depends on what they mean by that.
Right.
Motive. I'm not even going to try to guess. They had nine months access into 18,000 different organizations. You can just imagine what they could get into. Um, Method. If by means and method, if they mean how did they get this back door into SolarWinds? I mean that's a really good question. Somebody posted the link to reversing the Reversing Labs blog, which talks about this, and they actually talk about that it's snippets of this have been in there since October of 2019. Um, and Microsoft actually revealed this too on Monday in their blog, in their initial blog post. Um, Whoever did this, they had access to the source code. And even SolarWinds, I think, has come out and admitted that their build process was compromised, which means that somewhere from creating the source code to compiling it, that is where the compromise occurred. Either the attacker had access to the source code and they added in the new code into there somehow, or they compiled they compromised the compilation programs or something. Somehow they got the source code in there, because if you look, the the DLL that this is in was digitally signed by SolarWinds with a valid certificate, which means that that file had not changed since it was compiled, or I guess specifically since it was digitally signed. Um, you know, Honestly, looking at that, that kind of goes back to Nick, what you were talking about with this being a supply chain attack. Um, you know, who would, I mean, honestly, who would have really detected this if they weren't specifically looking for this? The DLL was digitally signed. It's coming from a trusted vendor. It's coming down through their updates from their servers. That you have no reason to believe that this would have happened. Leo, I think you had mentioned earlier that there have been times when this has happened before. I know of one other where I think it was 10 years ago, the Energizer had the same thing happen to them with one of their utilities they pushed out. I think you had mentioned to us in chat at one point that you knew of another one,
yeah.
or had
I
heard of
mean,
another one.
a Stucknex used the Realtek digitally signed uh, certificate. And then somebody else brought up the Tesla breach when they're using digitally signed certificates as
Yeah.
well. So there's precedence as to somebody or getting a bag of money to an insider. There is precedence to that.
Yeah.
Um, so it could have been as easy as that. Somebody gave a briefcase of money to an insider employee to an employee and be like, "Look, we need to get this certificate. Here's $50,000 in a briefcase," and
Yeah.
walk away. Never
Or
hear
even
from
just
them.
paid the insider to put the source code in there.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody in the chat mentioned a good point. They said, actually, it was addressed to you, Tyler. They said the source code of the update, and they said their statement is just from experience. They don't know for sure, but if the server had a weak password, then we can't guarantee that the weak password didn't allow access to other accounts via VPN or other stuff. I don't know
Yeah.
if they're referring to the SolarWinds server, like their corporate infrastructure.
Yeah. I haven't
But
looked. Oh, sorry. Go on.
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say I haven't looked too deeply into where that password was, because it did come out that SolarWinds on one of their servers
Is that
had
the
a
FTP
password of
thing?
Of Solarwinds 1, 2, 3 or something like that. So yeah, it could have, that definitely could have happened. That could have been, how they got in. But there's just not enough evidence to say one way or another.
I remember seeing that. Part of me cringed because it's like, it seemed like just jumping on the bandwagon of, let's go after SolarWinds and find low-hanging fruit. But I don't know that we have any evidence that that's related at this point. Tyler and Leo, can you confirm that what Mubix was saying in his blog about SolarWinds, the GUI not always removing accounts from the database when they're deleted from the GUI?
I'm a big fan of Rob. Have not read that post. A lot of peers are talking about it. He had, anything Rob Fuller puts out, you got to read right away. I've been stuck in this freaking engagement. I have not read, but Rob Fuller, he's an ex-military. He's an advocate for veterans, and so we're in a lot of same spaces. We interact with a lot of same people, and I'm a big fan of Rob Fuller. I just haven't been able to read that blog post.
I read the blog post. I haven't tested it out yet, but I mean, he's got the evidence on there that shows that, so I believe it.
Oh yeah. If you put it out there, yeah.
One thing I think would be worth talking about while we have people's attention is, Tyler, you mentioned this is something that you really wouldn't detect easily. So while we're like on that topic, I mean, what are our recommendations, right, as consultants for people to, how would what recommendations could have helped detect and identify this activity after the compromise? I mean for all the domains and all that they had a clean reputation, so reputation checks would not have worked at all. So there's no like signatures or anything like that would have come into effect. Yeah, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I it's not an easy question to answer because the attackers were patient, they were smart, and so when you're, and you all know this, and I'm sure everybody on the chat knows this, when you're in a SOC or when you're in IR, you're always looking for that low-hanging fruit, the most logical answer, or the obvious thing, and so this would not have stood out. I mean, honestly, the only way that I would think that somebody would detect this if they had locked down their SolarWinds box and saw it trying to beacon out to these domains and started digging into it to figure out why is it trying to beacon out to this non-solarwinds.com domain.
Somebody would have had to make that connection. The thing is, like, there are definitely things that are identifiers, but with the human element, it's like you're relying on the fact that somebody's going to make a connection between several things that don't stand out as malicious.
Yeah.
And like somebody just mentioned, maybe machine learning for the DGA domains. And the first thing that comes to my mind, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but the first thing that comes to my mind is, yeah, it might have alerted, but are you going to pick that out as bad if the machine learning is identifying a bunch of other stuff as a false positive? Because if you look at some of the crazy URLs that are out there for all different kinds of services, I mean, they would definitely trigger, I think, a machine learning algorithm for DGA stuff.
Yeah, if you've ever, and Leo, I'd be curious to see, how you would do this on like a threat hunt. But if you've ever gone and done like a search for DGAs, domain generated algorithm, domain names or host names in like even just narrow it down just to DNS traffic, that's not easy. There is a lot of stuff that comes out of it, and 99, or I'm not gonna say 99% of it, but a lot of it, the majority of it is legitimate. There are antivirus companies who, instead of doing like a web request to check a signature of a file, they do a DNS request. So you have, I think it was ESET that does this. If you have ESET in your environment, look at your DNS request, because you're going to see like thousands of requests to ESET, and it looks like a DGA.
Yeah, DGAs and flash plugs, double flash plugs, and all those. I guess I don't know if they're anti-forensics, but where thousands of domains, IP addresses are coming at you, and there's no way you can block them. Yeah, those are like the bane of my existence. I hate those. But there is like beacons you can set up, like the thresholds. If they beacon out, like something like Rita, which is open source, where it does the beaconing. If you see the heartbeat like out every minute or 2 minutes, because they install jitter as well to try to throw you
Mhm.
off.
They do.
So that's one way with the heartbeat, but that's like super hard. Not everybody does it. But if you're into like Juniper notebooks and where you can visualize the graphs and start doing the analysis through intervals, then it makes it a little bit easier. But as far as detection of the solar winds, I'll tell you right now, coming from a SOC and working in the military as a threat hunter, I'll tell you right now, I would not have spotted it. But what I would be monitoring was the crown jewels. I would
Mhm.
no doubt about I'll have all kinds of detections around my crown jewels, and I will never spot this a valid certificate. I'll never spot the ABS update or whatever it was for SolarWinds because it was legitimate. I would have spot somebody trying to access the crown jewels that weren't supposed to. That's what I would have spotted. And then it might take a little bit of work because then once they're in, they can, they're I don't know if they have like domain admin or anything like that, but once they got initial foothold, who knows what kind of access they had. But
Right.
hopefully I have my detections in place where anything out of the ordinary that's accessing my crown jewels, even one little deficiency, hopefully I'll be able to spot that and then trace it back to solar winds and that indicator. Hopefully, just
Yeah.
going back from there. I will love once these COVID restrictions are lifted and it's safe. I would love to go to conferences, hit up the bar, because somebody's gonna tell a story of how it was detected, and somebody's gonna tell the story of how it happened and the front lines. But until then, I don't think we're really gonna hear about it until we can hit the bars again. That's
Well,
where all the good talks happen.
the frightening thing, besides the stealth used in like the initial part of it, like even in post exploitation, if they focus, if they really focus on being as efficient as possible in privilege escalation, like in the way that's outlined by Microsoft in that blog, like in Azure AD with the forged certificates and all that. If they get to that point, so you think about every point that they could be caught, and in this case, it's like the further that they get along, truly the harder it is to identify because the further they make it, the more legitimacy they gain on the network through
Exactly.
forged certificates. You know, using legitimate accounts. You're not going to see any brute force activity. You're not going to see like scans across the whole network, failed logons, stuff like that, because it's all going to work because they've gained that control over the network.
Well,
Yeah,
it's interesting too. Justin Novus in chat, they brought up a really good point that, look, it's expensive for mom and pop shops to ingest DNS logs and correlate that. And they're absolutely right. I mean, I would even go as far as to say that most organizations don't do that. They don't have the ability to do that. I mean, we work with organizations all the time who I would say are kind of like medium size up to large size. And they don't have, the security monitoring that you would expect in there. And in something like this, you have to go back to March. You have to go back 9 months to be able to see all that. How many people or how many organizations actually have 9 months worth of DNS logs, of any logs really for that matter, to look at this? I mean, when we get pulled into an incident, 9 times out of 10, we're lucky if there's any centralized logs. And most often, the firewall logs are just sitting in on the firewall. They roll over every 10 minutes, or maybe we'll get lucky and there's Active Directory logs that go back a day. But most organizations, you're right, they just can't do this because they're not focused on security. They're focused on keeping IT up. They're focused on making money and keeping those systems running.
Yeah, think about how messed up that is. On top of all the legitimacy that I just mentioned, now you couple that with a lack of log and data retention. It's like they're
now
Oh,
they're
yeah.
ghosts completely, ghosts in your network.
now one thing I will say, this
I
was
like that.
extremely targeted. Like they weren't going after everybody that had that compromised version of Solar Winds. This was extremely targeted to specific um, targets of opportunity, I would say, or to specific companies, entities, agencies.
Well, but that's the thing. We don't know that. The media has been reporting that, but I don't know where they're getting that information. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here a little bit. The media has been saying, "Oh, well, all these government agencies were compromised," and that may be true. But I'm pretty sure that most of the media was pulling this from who SolarWinds client list was that they had on their website. So yes, technically they were compromised, but so were 18,000 other companies in the world. We don't know who the attackers were going after because as far as I know, that data has not been released outside of FireEye saying that, yes, we were compromised, we saw activity. And I think maybe a couple other companies have come out and said so.
And then even then, nobody's to say that they won't sell access later on. Like who says like they
Yeah,
do that all the time. After they do operation, one guy goes rogue and he sells access and makes money on the side. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
why wouldn't they do that? It's extra money. But anyway, there's a lot of questions that I lost. Let's see here.
Speaking of DNS logs, here's a good one. Speaking of DNS logs, how do you handle DNS over HTTPS?
I leave that to the other team members on the team to figure that out. That's why I hire people who are smarter than me. That honestly, things like that is what keeps me up at night. That and domain fronting and stuff like that you just don't have visibility into. It's so difficult to detect.
So there's Jaw3. You can fingerprint.
Yeah, good point.
And so you can fingerprint. I heard mixed things about Jaw3. Some people love it. Some people say it's hard to implement. Salesforce uses it. They're the one that I think they came up with Jaw3, and they're the one implemented. But there's other companies that struggle with it. But there's also like the before and after the actual traffic is encoded. There's like the headers, I believe, where you can fingerprint the before and after of the encryption. So there's always that the fingerprinting. But besides that, I mean, if it's encrypted and I mean,
Yeah, on see, honestly, I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. The ways that I would try to approach that if I had to were, if I was in an organization and unlimited funds, which never happens. But you would need to have, if you're doing it on the network side, you would need to have SSL inspection, and do it that way. Otherwise, you'd have to fall back to endpoint analysis and watch to see what DNS queries were being done at a low level on the endpoints. Outside of that, I really don't know, honestly.
how do you guys handle it at the IFAC, Nick?
Let's not go there.
Okay. Okay. But yeah, Jaw3 is a good solution. They do. They have Jaw3 and Jaw3S, so they attempt they strive to fingerprint and the encrypted traffic. So look that up by Salesforce. There's a great team there. It's also not the easiest, but also like Tyler said, there's the SSL inspection, which gets pretty expensive. I don't think most people do that I've seen.
So, just to chime in, I've had a couple people at this point. There's a few people who don't have accounts on here. They're like kind of messaging me on the side. From like an enforcement policy, you can restrict DNS over HTTPS, for example, with like GPOs, browser policies. Alternatively, I had someone mention that a lot of firewalls will just straight up block HTTPS or DNS over HTTPS. Of course, I don't have too much background in configuring that, so if anybody else has any input they want to talk about that, go ahead. And then somebody in the chat said only if you proxy the corporate traffic. That of course brings up another good point about security. I guess controls is like proxying that traffic. I think is critical for visibility. And there's a lot of like, especially now with everybody being remote, you need something that's agent based on the host. Like I don't know, I think Cisco Umbrella does that, doesn't it? Like it allows you to proxy all the traffic through a cloud proxy, and that would give you visibility into that as well.
I mean, there's always like Zeke and Bro. They do HTTP traffic as well. They do like a fingerprinting technique, where they don't inspect the encrypted like the encrypted traffic, but they're fingerprinting. They're getting the metadata of the traffic before it gets encrypted for HTTPS anyway. Now DNS over HTTPS might be different. Um, that might be different, but I know Zeek does it. They have their own technique. Jaw3. They also Zeek also incorporates Jaw3 as well. So there's ways out there to do fingerprinting of the traffic. You just can't get the content unless you get SSL decryption in, which.
What?
Go ahead.
No, sorry. So I was going to read a comment. Um, Flatpack the Legend says, "How about if you set up a Wi-Fi hotspot using a VPN from your phone and connect your laptop to it?" And yeah, yeah. I mean, that's certainly a way to bypass corporate restrictions for sure.
I mean, think about it right now. With everybody working from home, if you don't have your VPN tunnel set up right, then you're not seeing the internet traffic anyways. And I can almost guarantee nobody is instrumenting all their employees' homes with network monitoring. So at that point, everybody's pretty much blind anyways right now.
Yeah. Just to, I guess, close this out, I would just do the same techniques for fingerprinting HTTPS. I'll just do that because they do have to do a handshake. So I'll do the same techniques, which Jaw3 and Zeek and they use that as well. So I'll try and attempt that, but I'll be honest, I haven't tried it or inspected it in a long, long time. HTTPS, so it might be different now with the new browsers. So like the TLS over HTTP, and then all that. What's it? Mozilla has their own method, and then Chrome has their own method to encrypt traffic. So I didn't dig deep into it when they're both coming out with it, but I probably should. So, but any other cool questions you're seeing in there? I'm losing track of all the questions.
Flatpak said, "Sorry, I'm looking at this from an enterprise risk management view," and that's definitely a good perspective. I try to see things, although I don't come from that strong of a background in that. I always try to see things from that perspective because that's the environment you end up operating in, is the one that you create. So um, I think that it would be valuable to mention once again Security Onion. I think Security Onion is something that everybody should mess with because even if you just set it up at home, you can get an idea of what is capable using open source. I mean, I know Leo has mentioned Bro or Zeek and Rita, and all that is freely available and can be integrated with Security Onion. So like all this stuff that we're talking about, it's like, oh, well, how would I detect DNS over HTTPS? Um, we don't all have unlimited time, unfortunately, but a really neat experiment would be to set up Security Onion on a test network or even on your home network and make some DNS over HTTPS queries and then mess with JA3, integrate that and see what you think. But yeah, does anybody else have any other questions before we kill the feed?
Well, before we do that, we talked about your blog post to talk a little bit about the new one that we released today. So we released a new blog post on the SolarWinds stuff. This was actually a group effort. I kind of threw the initial stuff together, but then a lot of people contributed to it on the team. What we've been seeing is if you look at all the information out there, all the blog posts, it's either kind of all over the place, like you mentioned, Nick, when you were kind of putting the original one, you had to go to 3 or 4 different pages. Now it's probably like a dozen different pages to get all the information. Everything's all over the place. So what we hadn't seen is that anybody giving any clear kind of playbooks as to how you should respond to this. And so that's what we created. We created a Sunburst, or whatever you want to call this, incident response playbook that kind of goes through, based on our experience with this type of compromise, based off of what the kind of the community is saying you should do, what should you do to contain, eradicate, and recover from the incident, as well as, what questions should you be asking in order while you're investigating this, which you should be doing simultaneously, just as a kind of like a checklist. For people to have, so that they can look at that and say, all right, well, we did, these first 5 things, we forgot to do this last one, or this one doesn't apply to us, and so on. So
yeah, so I'm showing the blog post, Tyler.
Mhm.
the playbook. So this is from an incident responder's perspective.
Yes.
Uh, so you're going through the investigation, in the pick ERL, right? The prepare, identify, or investigate. Pick contain or containment, eradicate, and recover or lessons learned. So the only step we're missing here is prepare, which if you're reading this blog post, that's what you're doing. You're preparing. But I definitely recommend, because this goes through the whole incident response life cycle. I definitely recommend this blog post because it's from an incident response perspective. It's how would an analyst or a company respond to a Sunburst or this type of incident. So I really like this a lot. It goes through the every steps, the investigation portion, the detection, the contamination. How do you contain this breach? How do you eradicate? How do you get rid of it? And how do you recover it? Go back into business. So I definitely like that a lot. Let's see
I
here.
feel kind of bad that we didn't actually talk about the malware. We never even mentioned the name of the
Well,
malware.
we need Scott
Sunburst
on
and
to do that.
Teardrop.
Oh, I
Yeah.
know.
We need to. We need to
I was trying
get
to
get.
chat with him. They're like, hey, Tyler and Nick are coming on. You want to talk about the malware a little bit? But
Yeah,
he never responded.
get him
Yeah.
on and have him do a live reversing. Well, I mean, the nice thing is, first off, you can download this. There are a number of sites that you can download this from. This DLL. The second thing is it's .NET, which means you just you just download a .NET decompiler, and there are free ones. Probably one of the best ones out there is free. It's called DNSpy. Or ILSpy is another really good one that's free, and you just load the DLL in there, and you can see the source code. They didn't obfuscate it at all for good reason, because they didn't want to, seem obvious in there. And so you can actually go in there and see what the source code is. So I highly recommend anybody, doing that.
What was the name of that program?
Uh, DN, I'll type it in chat. It's a
Okay.
DNSpy, and then there's also ILSpy.
And
There are a couple other .NET decompilers. Just Google .NET decompiler, and you'll find a bunch.
So people that want to look at the malicious DLL or the binary, what proficiency level do you recommend for them having just to look at it and understand from a high level?
Honestly,
And
for this one, if you could read source code, you can look at this one. It's really that simple.
Especially if you follow along with a blog,
Right.
like a write up
Yeah.
or something, it's super
Yeah.
easy.
so college students that know
Oh
pseudocode,
yeah.
they
Oh,
can follow
absolutely.
along. Okay, so you
Absolutely.
don't have to be proficient in C# or anything like that, just to look at
No.
.NET. Okay.
Yeah. No. If you know what like a for loop is, I mean, there's going to be some obfuscation in there. They use some base64 obfuscation and things like that. But if you can, read, like you said, if you can read pseudocode, you won't have a problem with that. But the biggest part is, you just need to get it into the .NET decompiler. So,
So oh, sorry, Tyler. I just want to make sure we address this comment because they said it feels like we're always chasing our tails here. We look at something like this and try to sprawl and spread our reach around so many points of visibility and technologies. Then afterwards having to re-engineer solutions to keep pace, only to have to turn around and do it again. It's not scalable, and most practitioners can't keep up for one reason or another. So the way that I think about it, and maybe this answer isn't satisfactory, but the way I see it is you have sort of like a bell curve. Like the only statistical model that anybody knows, including myself. So we relate everything to it. But like you have the bell curve, right? And then in the model or in the middle, the actual bell, right? You have most attackers, you have most compromises, most breaches. And so all the basics that you can implement for monitoring, detection, like instrumentation, like Tyler mentioned, you can catch most of that with basic things. In my opinion, the way I see it is there's always going to be these fringe, high level attacks or compromises or campaigns where a lot of effort is put into it. I don't think we should focus on those, on catching those, because that's a road to kind of like exhaustion or never really accomplishing your goal. But if you can have a base set of controls put in place to detect most things, I mean, that's a huge win right there, and you'd be ahead of most. Now, one thing that I did want to mention on this conversation that we haven't talked about yet is I would like to hear your guys' opinion and everybody in the chat as well. Do you think that this level of proficiency, stealth, and quality, we'll call it, of a breach, do you think that that is the future of basically most breaches? Should we expect to see that level kind of come down to most other attackers?
I don't think so. Because this was a very when you look at all the moving parts in order to make this happen, this was probably a very complex attack that was in the works for a long time. So because of that, I don't think so. I look back at, even just the last year, when I look back at all the incidents that we've worked over the last year at TrustedSec, the vast majority of them, the root cause is phishing or RDP. So somebody clicked on a link they shouldn't have, or an organization had RDP open to the internet with weak passwords. We're just going to continue to see the low hanging fruit being what people get compromised with, because it's easy for the attackers. Yes, this is still going to happen. I can almost guarantee that there's other software like this that's backdoored that nobody knows about yet. So I'm sure eventually we'll find some more, but I think it's going to be the exception to the rule, honestly. Leo, what
Yeah,
do you
no,
think?
no, the resources involved to pull this off, manpower, monetary, um, they burned a lot of resources doing this in preparation, probably like up to a year, just from a, and this is just experience. I don't know what the heck happened, but
Mm.
just from previous cases that I worked in and similar cases, they burned, not burned. Oh, I mean they're burned now. Now they have to do something different. So much money was and resources, manpower, time was put into this, and now it's all gone. Think about that. Now they got what they needed. They're in there for 9 months. They got what they needed, and we don't know the full story, but they got what they needed. I'm thinking it was, in my opinion, it wasn't the tools. That was just, it was probably an opportunity, a target opportunity, probably most likely. But in my opinion, but they got intel. Who knows what else they got? We'll never get the full story. But but now that all this is in the news, all that work is done. They have to come up with a new TTP now, because now we're all looking at Solarwind. Now maybe they have to move to the alternate, but they spend a lot of resources on this. This
Mm-hmm.
wasn't what we see day to day, and why would it be? The easy stuff still works. The phishing still works for 99% of the companies. The advanced attacks, they work, but not for 99% of the SMBs and even large companies. You don't have to do this complex attack to infiltrate. You can
Mm-hmm.
fish somebody. You can. I go back to fishing, but to make money, you don't need to go in this deep to make money. This is one of the best operations, I think, that I read about, that I heard about, and we don't know the whole story. We're gonna be studying this case for years to come, and we're gonna look back. And on that point, I want to say the response by FireEye should be something we all strive for.
Oh yeah.
Every company. I mean, I talk shit as good as the next person, but they are the gold standard as far as responding, how you respond to a breach, how do you disclose that breach, um, and how you help the community out at the same time. They're the gold standard right now, I think, and I think other companies are gonna be looking at that and be like, how do we respond? Let's look at FireEye. How did they respond? Well, they put out their indicators and they burned their own offensive tool sets. Cool, they can rebuild that, but they put it out for other companies to use, other people, practitioners to use. You know, maybe they didn't tell us the whole story, but they gave us more information than anybody else did. And if this happened, like we go back to Uber, didn't they get sued for not disclosing a breach? and that
Yeah.
that was this like it happened like a year back or something like that, and they never disclosed it. Now they have to pay up like 6 million. I don't know, something not a lot to them, but a lot to us, right? Um, so that their response was awesome. A lot of people think like FireEye consultants are cocky. I don't see it that way. I see them as confident and leaders in their field. And they talk that way. They talk confidently. Nothing but props to FireEye. I wish I could say the same about Solarwinds. But I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard a lot from SolarWinds. So, and FireEye is in front of it. So props to
It's
them.
for sure.
Jeez, sorry, I just saw Flatpak said that he's in the UK. It's 2 a.m. there, and he stayed up for this. So thank you for doing that, man. That's
Thanks,
that's
man.
You gotta
awesome.
send him a T-shirt or a sticker or
Yeah,
something.
exactly. Well, just to kind of, Leo, I really like what you said, and I think you kind of made a really good roundabout point too. Is that first off, we, we don't know the full story. Nobody knows the full story except for the people who are responding to this. And it's very unlikely that we will ever know the full story, unless there's like a Darknet Diaries episode on this in a year or two, which wouldn't surprise me, honestly. But, one of the other things too is I didn't even think about this till you brought it up that, what did the attackers meet their goal? So let's, they had 9 months to meet whatever goal that they were doing. Let's say they did. Why didn't they take their back door out and not get caught? And when I think about that, and again, we're assuming, they did meet their goal. They didn't need to use it anymore. They were going to abandon it and just kind of move on. Why didn't they take that out? And if you think about it, right now, so let's pretend that we've had confirmation that this was a Russian APT. Right now everybody's like, oh my gosh, the Russians are these amazing hackers. Their reputation has just skyrocketed. They have just pushed out China as the top APT for most people, and everybody's fearful of them now. And so by leaving their back door in and possibly even allowing it to get caught, their reputation as hackers have just skyrocketed, and they're like, everybody's afraid of them now. I think that's kind of an interesting point of view. Again, I'm just kind of speaking, thinking out loud. We have no proof of this, but that would be an interesting thing if that's actually what happened. I didn't think about that until you mentioned that.
Hey Tyler, are you going to incorporate this into one of your tabletop scenarios for future tabletops?
I would love to. Every time something like this happens, I think, oh man, this would be a great tabletop. But I know that if I would have pitched this as a scenario before it actually happened, nobody would have done it. Everybody would have been like, that's too far fetched. Nobody's ever going to do that.
So there's a hot Twitter debate between Threat Intel and Ops people, right? I won't say guys, I mean y'all, peoples. Is this a cyber attack or is this cyber espionage? In the military, CNA or CNE? Is it exploitation or is it an attack? What do you guys think? I have my opinion. I can go first. So my opinion
go ahead.
My opinion is it is an attack. I say it's an attack because the intent we don't know the intent. I'm assuming the intent was more than just espionage, more than just intel gathering. I'm assuming they're going to use that, and that's me pretending I'm still in the military and still seeing the whole picture. I'm assuming that they're going to use that intel for kinetic attacks. That's what I'm thinking. Somehow, some kind of physical operation where actual troops are going to use it, actual people are going to use that intelligence they gather to do something malicious, to do something to the national security, with a grave damage to national security. I think that's what the actual definition is. Um, that's what I think. So I think it's an attack because that intent is that somebody's going to use it for a physical attack. So I think it's an attack, but I don't know the whole picture. So it's just my assumption.
I wish that I had. I was just gonna say this is a bit out of my league, but I just like staring at bits and bytes on the computer.
Yeah,
I mean, when you say CNA, I think like the terms that come to mind are like, was there any destruction or disruption or damage or anything like that? that's the first thing that comes to my mind of, was it attack or not? And maybe that's not the correct definition for that. I could be wrong, but I don't think we've seen that in this case, right?
Yeah, to our knowledge, yeah. I mean, honestly, you're definitely much smarter than me on this topic. Because when I think of CNA, the first thing that comes to mind is Certified Novell Administrator, which again is showing my age.
I remember that.
Yeah, so I really don't know. I'm honestly, I don't even know what the difference between the two or what distinguishes one from the other. If it was definitely, I think, an attack. If you kind of look at it, if you take a step back and look at, it was an attack against somebody. And SolarWinds was the means to the end. What they did with that data, I think, or what that data was really is kind of, goes down to what, if it's espionage or not. But again, you are definitely much smarter than me on this, so I'm not really sure.
I wouldn't say smarter, but
XNC asked a good question. They said, are supply chain attacks fairly prevalent and not just getting as much attention?
I guess it would depend what you mean by supply chain attacks, because to me that means a number of different things. For me, a supply chain attack, and I could be wrong because I don't have my CISSP, so I don't know the true definition of it, but to me, a supply chain attack is any type of attack that comes from either a supplier of data or like a partner of services. And we've definitely seen that. I mean, we just worked a ransomware incident where the attackers got in through a partner of that company. So I think we are starting to see more supply chain attacks, but it depends on what your definition of supply chains are. Whenever I hear supply chain attack, though, I always think of the story that came out a couple of years ago where I think it was MGM, the casino in Vegas, got hacked through a thermometer in an aquarium that was internet connected for whatever reason, and the attackers were, or it might have even been a pen testing company. Somebody got into the aquarium temperature gauge that was on the internet and then pivoted into their environment from that.
Oh, wow.
I love that story, but
that.
that's always comes to my mind.
That's like out of Mr. Robot.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, I think the same thing. Even if it's just the email server gets compromised and they use that email server to talk to their client who they send them to fish, I consider that a supply chain attack. So I'm the same way. Anything where a business partner email or any type of pivot from a business partner to one partner to another, I consider that a supply chain attack. I'm sure there's a standard definition for it. But
That was a good time to mention that if you have any vendor accounts that have access into your environment unrestricted via RDP, at least make sure they're not a domain administrator.
Yes,
account.
please.
Oh yeah, we just ran into that, huh?
If not, you can always call us when it goes, when it goes wrong, because it will go wrong.
Let's see. It's a few questions. Do you think this was an attack or part of an attack? Do you think it's an attack or part of an attack? You mean like if there's? I'm not exactly sure. Wild twins. I'm not exactly sure what you mean by that question. If this is an attack or a part of an attack.
I think they probably mean, was this their end objective, or is there more to come? Yeah.
I think there's more to the story. Yeah, for sure. Before and after, but we'll never know.
And one thing we should probably say too is this backdoor. I mean, all right, I'm going to caveat this statement because there's always an exception, but this backdoor cannot be used anymore by the attacker because Microsoft and FireEye and GoDaddy have taken those domains and they have implemented a internal kill switch into that. There was kind of like this kill switch that if the backdoor received a certain like DNS response, it would uninstall itself or something like that. Microsoft has implemented that. So technically, unless the attackers can subvert your DNS and redirect the DNS to somewhere other than the Microsoft sinkhole, this backdoor I don't think can be used anymore. But does this mean that this type of attack is over? This threat actor is over? No, I don't think, not by a long shot. There's still, like Leo said, there's still a lot more we don't know. So, and remember too, this this was just the thing to gain the foothold into the organization. The attackers would then pivot over to a different post-exploitation framework. I know Cobalt Strike has been mentioned in the blogs as to what they use. I'm sure they use it. There are other things too. So, there's definitely a lot more out there. So.
See, I'm looking through the chat.
If they find themselves short on funds, they can sell access to a ransomware group.
Yeah, exactly.
So hold on, Tyler, what if they use something like nc.exe to another domain to maintain connection?
Oh, that would be interesting. I assume what you mean by that is that, what if the attackers used like netcat to, maintain a connection to another domain? Definitely, possible. Netcat would have stood out. I think I can't say that because, how often do we get called and people don't notice the bad stuff, or they see the bad stuff and they just ignore it. It's definitely something, else that, they would pivot to. Like I said, Cobalt Strike has been mentioned. Who knows what else they do? They could have their own custom backdoors that nobody knows about yet. So who knows?
So to pivot off to since we're closing out here, what games is everybody playing? Recent games, just to close out.
Back to the happy times now.
Well, what games are you looking forward to, or are you currently playing that you might recommend?
So, a friend of mine just purchased for me Cyberpunk 2077.
Nice.
Oh, for what system?
PC.
Okay.
Of course.
Unfortunately, I haven't had too much time to play it, but my two friends have been playing it. One of my friends has been playing it. I'm looking forward to giving that some more of my attention.
I heard big patches are coming out soon to fix the game.
Yeah, I
That's what I
mean,
hear.
I will say this, like I played through the intro and it's like there were a couple things that stood out to me, but I don't rage as hard as everyone else when I see glitches in a game. Of course, I didn't have to pay for it because I got it as a gift, but
Are you a street kid, or are you a corpo, or are you a
Corpo, baby.
nomad? What are you?
I started with Corpo.
Oh, you such a corporate man. You such a chill.
Oh man,
Is it pretty fun though?
it's pretty cool. It's a pretty neat RPG. In my ignorant opinion, because I just started playing it, it seems to be a mix between some elements of like Grand Theft Auto and just the whole cyberpunk future aesthetic. Maybe a little bit of like Fallout
Yeah, that's what
as
I heard.
well.
I heard Fallout. Yeah.
But less GTA, more Fallout probably.
What about you, Tyler? What's the latest and greatest?
So oddly enough, the last couple times you've done the stream, I've been playing Star Wars Squadrons. So I've been playing that a lot. I really love that game.
Any Easter eggs in there?
There definitely are.
Okay.
I've kind of taken a break from that though, and I've been working through Skyrim. For as long as Skyrim has been out, and I've had it for at least 3 or 4 years. I kind of jumped on it late. I've never completed any of the main quests, and so I'm working through the main quests now. I've completed I think 2 of them.
Okay.
Just kind of working through that.
What's your percentage? Does it say your percentage of what you completed?
No,
Oh, it doesn't do that? Okay.
No, because there are so many like side quests in Skyrim and all of that. It's I don't even know how you could do that. So
somebody said, did they fix the TIE bomber swarms?
They did. I think they did. They actually, so HP Squadrons, or HP, I keep saying HP. The Star Wars Squadrons, they just came out with 2 new fighters that you could be in, either the B-wing or the TIE Defender. I think it's the TIE Defender. A new TIE. I haven't gotten to play those yet because I haven't picked it up because of just been being too busy. But yeah, the TIE bomber swarms with all these different issues where you could just like swarm on somebody and just like completely take out like this huge MC-75 capital ship. They finally fixed that, but it's a fun game. I mean, if you've ever played any like Star Wars flight sims, this just blows them all away. It's just so fun.
I played the trial. I thought it was pretty fun.
I didn't play the original like MS-DOS
X-Wing games. Yep.
Yeah, but I did play Squadrons on the N64. And that was my first foray into squadrons, and I loved it. The N64 one was awesome. What was it? Super Nintendo? I can't remember.
That was yeah, it was N64. I
Yeah, it
remember
was
that.
like one of the best games I ever played.
Hmm.
So that was my first foray. The MS DOS game, like the Tie Wings, they're a
Yeah.
little bit before my time. Just a little bit.
What about you? What games are you playing?
Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh, really?
So
Great
I
game.
just started it. I'm probably like in the first. I think I am in the first chapter. About to hit second chapter. Um, a little
Love that
birdie told.
game.
A little birdie told me that I got a next gen console, so we'll see.
Whoa.
Nice.
So we'll see. So just pulling that off, just getting one is something that I gotta be grateful for. So
This
I
this
gotta.
little birdie must know some Python or something. Right
No,
about.
this little birdie. It's my daughter. She's like, Dad, I think you have a console, or you have a game. I was like, oh, okay. So we'll see. So I'm looking forward to Cyberpunk and all that, but I might wait a little bit. So
The story of Red Dead Redemption, I love. I love. I
I
played
love the
the last
music.
one.
I
Yeah,
love the
I
music.
played the last one on the last gen consoles, and I played the most recent one on PS4. The story just incredible story, I think, and I like that era, the Wild West era.
I'm trying to move to Montana, but my wife won't let me. So I'm trying to say, can we move to Montana and live off the land? But
Is that where Kanye lives? No, he lives in Wyoming.
does he? Something like that'd be cool.
So somewhere out there.
So I think we're about to close out. It's getting pretty late in the East Coast and Central Coast. Um, let's see here. And then the Cyberpunk, clearly too old for this conversation, so we'll send love from the UK. You're not too old. Come on, Flatpak. Um, did they fix the TIE Swarmer, X-Wings, and the UK? Yeah, it is super early though, Flatpak. So um, I think that's everything. Appreciate everyone coming out and staying up with us, Flatpak and everybody else here in the U.S. and the rest of the world. Appreciate it, and we'll see you guys after New Year's. In the next one, we're gonna try to get who we're missing. Oh, we're missing Booney. So
Yeah.
we gonna talk some Sims and sock. He comes from the sock and sim background, and he's an expert. He's one of our senior consultants, and his I would say he's an SME when it comes to all Sims and just the environment and working in the sock because he was in it for so long. So we'll try to get Booney in here next, and yeah. So thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Nick, you have the most apperences here.
Yeah.
You're two.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that people are going to start making deep fakes out of me with the amount of time I have on camera.
So we might have to talk about you being a regular host here. We'll
Oh,
see.
I would love that attention. I would
Really,
eat that right up.
really. Okay.
Might do
Yes.
might do some probably not a good idea for the ego.
Why is that?
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Uh, cool. So yeah, so we'll talk about that offline about you come being regular, and then maybe we might have to start expanding out to outside the industry. There's a few people. I mean, outside TrustedSec, there's a few people that are interested.
Yeah,
Uh,
same. I've
uh,
got some people who would love to jump on,
really,
but
yeah. Let's chat afterwards, and then
have to be screened.
okay, yeah, for the hoodlums and the trolls, we got to screen them out. Okay.
We need
Um,
proof of employment at a major infosec.
nah, nah.
Somebody who we trust.
The best ones aren't working for a big corporation
That's
or
true. It's true.
the best ones are yeah. So let's leave it at that. All right. So thank you everyone. Thank you Tyler. Thank you sir. Thank you Nick. Thank you sir. Um, I'll see everybody tomorrow. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and then everybody else. I'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Peace.
All right. See you later.